1/3 of global recruiters state that AI literacy matters for hiring, which is up 5% from last year. This means that your degree could be outdated if it isn't implementing AI. The biggest risk isn't AI taking your job, it's not knowing how to think with it. And this can happen through cognitive offloading, which is both your superpower and also your trap. So the way to stay hireable when things are constantly changing is stay adaptable, confident, and relevant. And it's so important to use the tools that we have in a proactive sense and in a way that we are using our brains and critical thinking. Hi guys, welcome back to Clearly Becoming, a podcast all about inspiring ambitious individuals by providing them the strategies, tools, and having honest conversations to navigate the chaotic journey of building one's career in their 20s. And as a fellow 20-something-year-old, I definitely empathize. It can be difficult. And so things that we're going to talk about today is that the job landscape and the career landscape is changing constantly. There's so much going on, new skills, new technology are being implemented, and it's hard to keep up with everything. And something that I'm going to be really talking about today is AI. And I think this has definitely disrupted the career landscape, but also just our personal lives in general. I mean, everybody is using it for so many different things. And some people are fearful of using it. Some people are really going for it. Some people are finding new things. And I just think it's so important when these new technologies come up and when things are changing in terms of the business landscape, the economy, whatever, to really learn from it, to be curious and open, because these novel things will feel normal to us in the next X amount of years. When the first typewriter came out, we were jarred about how to use it, but now we have laptops and that's just normal to us. Transportation was a huge thing that made traveling to places so much more efficient. And so to be really curious about these things, because this is how we grow and evolve as humans. And I think it's really just a beautiful thing that is innately to us, is that we are able to develop with the changes. But the thing is that with these changes, there's a learning curve and it's scary at first. And we need to be able to be open to the opportunities of what can happen, because you never know what it can bring for us. And so seeing that positive outlook on an opportunity instead of being fearful from it. Because when you're fearful from something, then you stay in your comfort zone. Then you stay put and stagnant instead of going and developing with things that could be beneficial for you and for society. And so how to stay hireable when the rules are changing is something that I'm going to be talking about in this episode. How to be adaptable, how to be confident, how to be relevant, while also using that critical thinking. And I thought it was really interesting that the Wall Street Journal found that the least brain activity happened when students were passively listening in classes. And this makes me feel that being present doesn't automatically mean that you're engaged, and that it's really important that you utilize tools and frameworks and whatever you're given content in an active way so that you're actually using your brain and your reasoning and your critical thinking to enhance your self development and also just what you can do from it. And so I think with AI especially, there's a lot of pain points with it. Will my job exist in the next 5 years? Will one wrong move set me back? Or am I already behind because I'm not keeping up to date with the latest tools and strategies and whatever it is? And there's also a lot of early career pressure about needing to get it right, and whatever right is, because there's no right path. And I've talked about this so much, but there is no real timeline towards your career, what you're doing. You just need to be curious, learn, and especially learn from those mistakes. I want to reframe AI. It's not a replacement towards your job. It's not a threat. This tool can actually amplify how you already think, communicate, and create. But you have to learn how to use it in a conducive manner. And I think that's the real important part of this episode that I'm going to be talking about. Is the biggest risk of AI isn't taking your job. It's about how you think with it. And if you just heard my language, it's not just use it, but how you think with it as a collaborative tool and something that can help stimulate you instead of just make you more passive. And fundamentally, it's our responsibility of how we use this tool to help us grow. We are presented with so many things, so much content, so much stimulation, but it's how we inherently take these things in or choose not to take it in to help us grow and develop. And that is something that I think is really important as you're building your career and just as you're building yourself up, is to know whether a projection coming onto you is something valuable to yourself. And definitely check out my personal branding episode because I talk all about core values and how you can understand what is meaningful to you. And I think that clarity will help you make decisions and align your life so much easier. So I want to go into a little bit of the science of what cognitive offloading is, because I think with AI especially, this is something that we do a lot. So cognitive offloading is a natural human tendency where we offload tasks to other things like calculators, calendars, GPS. We ask the GPS how to navigate us and we just follow it blindly sometimes. We don't even ask questions. I mean, sometimes you look for the best route, whatever. I'm getting off on a tangent. But we naturally offload tasks because we only have so much capacity in our brains at a point of time. So the brain, of course, for the survival instincts, wants to make it more efficient and make sure that we are using the least amount of energy while still producing what we need to so that we can sustain ourselves for the long term. And so what happens with AI is that this is the next level of cognitive offloading, is that we're just offloading all these tasks to make it easier for us to free up energy for us to use someplace else. This free mental bandwidth can be really important, and it can help us leave more time for us to strategize, create things, use our judgment skills. And I think it's really important that we embrace AI as a tool that can really assist us in these skills that we need to focus more time with. And I talked about the prioritization matrix, and I'll definitely link it below, but it's what do we need to prioritize? Where do we actually want to spend our time thinking? Where do we want to put our energy towards? Because when you put your attention to something, that's where the energy flows, and that's where you can actually really develop something big. And if we are constantly doing the little tasks of creating our timetables and creating emails to send to people, and if we have to read these long articles, whatever it is, maybe that's not something that we want to spend all of our time with, because we want to spend time creating a solution, using our judgments to balance the pros and cons, looking at the opportunity cost, understanding where we want to see the company in the next 5 years. Those are the things that we want to put our energy towards, and which is why we offload to AI. There is a caveat with offloading so much information, is that we're actually reducing our critical thinking at some points. And critical thinking is so important. It's something that humans have thrived on for years and years. It has helped us evolve and survive. And so that's why I want to really talk about how we can use AI as a tool, but also retain our critical thinking. And I wanted to bring an example that the MIT Media Lab did. They ran a study on 18 to 39-year-olds and split them into 3 groups. And in these 3 groups, they had to write SAT essays. And one of the groups used chat to write them. One of the groups used Google search engine. And then one of them just had to use their brain only. And the results were fascinating. The ChatGPT group had the lowest brain engagement. It had more repetitive ideas. It didn't have a lot of creativity. And people got lazier over time as they were just using chat to write the essay for them. Now, the brain only group had the highest neural connectivity, and they had higher creativity, memory, and ownership of the task. And the Google search engine group had active engagement and satisfaction. From these 3 groups, we can see how only using chat actually harms our critical thinking, and we're not able to remember everything as much. We're not able to retain the information that we learned. We feel like it's not even ours. Chat is obviously bringing us like 5 ideas that are the exact same, but when you're using your brain, when you're searching up tools in the Google search engine and you're actually collaborating with it, that's where you can retain more information, and that's where you can have a stimulating conversation and a fruitful output that is actually based on what you want. And I think it was really interesting that Advait Sakar, he is an AI design and researcher. He was talking about on a TED Talk, which I highly recommend listening to, and I'll definitely link it below. It's so interesting about how AI affects your brain. And it was talking about outsourcing thinking without intention weakens critical thinking, creativity, and memory and metacognition. And that metacognition is knowing when to use the tool, and also more importantly, how to use the tool. And so that we're not just these blobs that are just offloading every single thing and we're not actually stimulating ourselves and learning, which is so important for our development and also for growth in society as well. Jobs are more and more appreciating how people are resilient and adaptable. And I've talked about this in my last 2 episodes about how important it is to remain resilient and adaptable and use those problem solving skills. And even my professor in one of my lectures was talking about how important it is to ask the right questions, to get the ball moving in the right way, because miscommunication happens when you're not actually talking about the same thing. It's when two people are thinking that they're talking about the same things. They're thinking they want to be talking about the logical side of the conversation, but it's actually they want to be talking about the emotional part. Or it's about they have this problem that they want to solve and you're missing it because you're not understanding what really needs to be solved. And this is where critical thinking happens, when you're able to extract information, synthesize it, and then evaluate upon it. And this is where when you just offload it to AI, you're not being able to extract the important bits, and you're not the one synthesizing it or evaluating this text. Hence why you remember less of what you had read when you just input it in. And you're not actually taking ownership of it either because it's somebody else's work. And so I think it's just really important with this message to have a growth mindset around how to use AI in a conducive way that actually is intentional. And that intentional bit is probably the most important thing about how you can use AI to leverage your thinking and retain that critical thinking aspect that is so important to humans. Also, that the most hireable people aren't always the fastest learners. They're the clearer learners. They're the ones that actually stop to evaluate what they're actually saying and embrace new perspectives and be creative with that. Be curious about those other perspectives and see how you can intertwine them to create something so meaningful and impactful for the world. And so why this matters now is that AI has been embedded in so many things. It's been embedded in writing, it's embedded in research, marketing, customer support, data analysis, product development. There's so many things. And these entry-level tasks that once were really run by humans are now being offloaded to AI. And it doesn't mean that it's bad. It means that it could be more efficient. We just need to learn how to adapt with it, which is why I wanted to create this episode, is because it's not only about integrating AI into your life and being curious about it. It's that these things will happen all the time. New things will be coming up, and it's so important to stay up to date with it and learn how to leverage them for your benefit and not let it take over your life. And so, as I talked about before, employers really want that judgment, want people to ask the right questions, as I said, and synthesize that information and communicate clearly. I've been reading a lot about HR and just what they're looking for. I think the Harvard Business Review is a really good place to learn about what companies are looking for and how you can stay up to date with these skills as well. Not only AI, but just skills in general that are really important for employability and also just as humans. And because this is an episode all about AI, I just wanted to bring in something that I found really interesting on what happens when we just let AI do the work for us. I'm now going to dive into an experiment done by Anthropic, which owns Claude, which is another AI tool. And I think this experiment is really interesting because it's basically stating the dangers of just totally letting AI be responsible of a task or situation and the ethical implications of it. So what happened is that Anthropic held Claude responsible of a small automated vending machine selling beverages and food out of this little vending machine. And the goal was for it to be profitable and be a rational business owner. And so what happened is that AI started to give products away for free. And this is because they were manipulated easily by these expert professionals, which were actually just Slack messages and employers. AI was so susceptible to these requests, and they were very easy to accede to these users' requests, such as, 25% employee discount. Well, I should have this for free, or whatever it was. The point of this is that it's so important to know how to prompt AI. It's shown that AI doesn't understand the difference between a manipulation tactic and something that is actually a request, like a professional request. And that can be really dangerous in other instances or circumstances that have a higher risk potential. It was also shown in this experiment that it violated its own rules. This AI machine is not physical. It is an intangible thing. And so when it said that it had physical delivery capabilities with specifying specific clothing, well, that's not real because AI can't be a person. And it didn't understand that it was a machine at some points of time. And it also ran the business into a loss because of this manipulation by humans and giving away products for free. And so this shows that AI is really persuadable. It lacks content discrimination and it has no real consequence awareness. And the real danger of AI is that it compresses this expertise. It lowers the barrier of intentionality and capability, which humans have. One thing that I thought was really interesting that was brought up by Amadei was that when this thing happens in instances that have a really high risk circumstance, it can be really dangerous for society. It's enabling people to be able to have mass amounts of information without having a degree. Like I can look up something online or I can look up something about AI, about the brain or about engineering or something and get so much content, so much information at the tips of my fingers that I couldn't have in the past 10 years. And so the danger of this is that what he said, Amadei said, is that a disturbed loner can't build a nuclear weapon, but AI elevates them to a PhD virologist capability, meaning that you were given the information and the tools to do this, but something that could be so harmful for society, which is why it's so important when you have this power to have judgment. Because power without judgment enables us to so much risk, which is just uncomprehendable. Having that judgment tool and having that morality lens when you're utilizing these tools is so important. Us as humans, we bring that discernment, we bring that moral reasoning, we bring that communication and ethical boundaries, and really making sure that we are a collaborative team with this tool to enable that we're using it in a healthy way and an adaptive way for society and not using it in a way that can harm other people. So now I'm going to get into the actionable framework because I think it's really important to just when you're listening to these episodes to summarize how to actually use these things. How can we actually stay up to date with AI and these skills that are ever changing in just such a fast-paced landscape, especially in careers and things like that? How can we actually implement them into our lives just now and in a way that's easy? Because I think that's really important. And so I'm going to talk about the 3 L's, which is learn, leverage, and lead. And you can use these with any other skill. It doesn't have to just be AI. I'm just using AI as an example because I think it is such just a contemporary topic right now. And it's something that has been on my mind a lot. And it is something that is being talked about a lot in careers, in the hiring stages, in the organizational. It's being used at every single level and how we can actually implement it into our lives. Number 1 is learn. Staying curious but not overwhelmed. Looking at articles, I look at the Financial Times about what's happening in the AI landscape just to get a little bit more information on what's happening. So I saw that China has created this new AI tool, and learning about that, learning about the dangers of AI from Anthropic, learning about that experiment was just interesting because it gets me thinking about how AI is being implemented and how we can learn from it and how we can make sure that it's being used in the right way. And then following conversations, not just tools, listening to podcasts, talking about it with your friends and family, getting their judgments on new skills or whatever it is, just to get a little bit more perspective about what it is. If you want to be a better communicator, read a book about communication, talk with your friends, use those tips and tools and see how it works for you and see how you can experiment with it. And ask yourself, what is changing in my industry right now? What can I learn more about so that I can stay relevant in this industry? If you're in fashion, what are the trends? What are the new ideas that are coming up? How can you learn more and be able to discuss it in a thoughtful way that resonates with you? Because when you are talking about it with other people and when you're in your career aspect, I think it's so important to have that connection to yourself, because when things are more meaningful to you, you will do them so much more. You'll be so much more interested. You'll remember it better because you have that emotional connection to it. And then the second one is leverage. don't just learn AI in general, or don't just learn a concept in general, really apply it to where you spend the most material energy or experience in. Because when you just take in things passively, when you're reading things, like if I read a book or if I listen to a podcast, but I don't actually take action on it, whether or not I journal about it or implement it into a conversation that I have, you're not actually really engaging with this material. And then you're not really understanding what it looks like to you. This can be seen in when you're reading just a journal article or something. And something that I've been really enjoying doing is, for one of my classes, I read the article, I highlight it, I underline it, and I bring in my connections. So if it's with nudging or something, I think about, what is the ethical implications of this? Are we actually just manipulating people into buying more things? Or are we actually nudging them towards something that's important and significant and could actually help them in the future or help make their life more efficient? And so just understanding that dynamic between your thinking and the article. And then what I like to do is sometimes I put it into Notebook LM, which is an AI tool to generate me a podcast, because I really like to listen to things. I mean, I make a podcast, so it kind of makes sense, but I also love listening to podcasts, and it just gives me that overview, that general overview of what the article. And sometimes if I read the abstract of the article and I just really don't understand it, or if I'm in the introduction and it's just all this jarring language that I don't know how to deal with, I actually put it into Notebook LM and I listen to the podcast to give me a summary of it. And then I can go through it again, the article itself, and understand it a little bit better. And then what I do is that I use sometimes AI to generate a summary of the document with bullet point form so that I can glance at it. And then I add in my own relevant experiences that I had underlined and highlighted while reading the article so that I can bring in my own thinking about what this article meant to me and how can I apply it in my learning, how I can apply it towards my papers, whatever I'm doing for that class. And so this shows that I'm actually implementing AI into my work. It shows that I'm playing around with how to prompt with AI and shifting it from just an answer engineer to more of a coaching one, asking it questions. Well, don't just give me the answer to this question. Ask me questions that will help me think this through. Are there any counter arguments that I haven't thought of? And counter arguments are so important to think about because this opens and broadens your perspective to something that you might have not thought about. And then you can use your discernment and your judgment to see if it actually resonates or if you think your point is stronger in this sense. And this is the way that you use critical thinking with AI. It's when you are interacting with it effortlessly with AI generating those summaries or those podcasts or whatever it is, but you're cognitively effortful. You're using that critical thinking. You're thinking about, what does this AI generated summary actually mean? What are the limitations of it? What is something that they might have missed? What is something that I might have missed? And that is where you're able to leverage this tool in something that you can create strategies from. You're no longer just a passive learner. You're actively engaging with it and applying it so that you're incorporating it into your life and into whatever you're doing, projects and tasks. The third one is lead. And I think it's so important to be an early adopter with these skills and just making sure to not be fearful of them and something that you're experimenting with. And leaders inspire other people. It doesn't mean that you have to be the loudest person in the room. It means that you are taking action to inspire. And confidence really comes from competence. When you are able to experiment with these tools, then you are able to be more confident about using them, about talking about them. And people find confidence so attractive because it means that you're so secure in yourself and what you're doing and that you won't waver at a little thing that might come up. Or if something happens and there's a problem, you are able to come back from it. You're able to be confident that you have the skills and the tools to solve whatever it was. And really having that judgment and having that ethical lens and communicating about it. Early transparency about if you don't know something or if you think that maybe it isn't the best thing to do. Being able to have that discernment with AI is so important. And sometimes I feel that with so much information at our fingertips and just so much content that we're consuming, we're not actually fact checking what we're learning. And I think it's so important to have that cross verification, to be able to understand that AI comes up with all of these information from databases and things such as the news, things from social media, things from people like influencers making them online, people that don't have actually the educational background of it. And I say that with me too, cross verify me. If you think something is wrong with what I'm saying, absolutely look it up online. I could be saying something that's not correct to you, and please let me know. I would love to know if I'm saying something that maybe isn't right, because as much as I try to look up journal articles that are by credible people, sometimes I can get things wrong, and I will definitely own up to it. And so just really take everything with a grain of salt. If AI gives you a summary of something, look it up and see if there was a different article talking about the same thing. Make sure you're not just depending on one source for all your information. And I think that is something that we've lost a little bit in our generation and as a society, of not really using our critical thinking to see if things are actually true. Because there's so much fake news out there, and it's so important to make sure that what you're taking in is rational, logical, and something that is true. I have another method called the sandbox method, which you can use while you're using AI, especially when you're writing, is to draft the essay first, and then stress test it with AI. Don't automatically go to AI to do it. First, do it yourself, making sure to use your own thinking while you're using AI. And so for an example with this is, find flaws in my reasoning. What am I assuming? What are the counter arguments? This really helps the metacognition because it's actively staying engaged. It's preserving that human agency, which is so important and imperative to our society. And so just to say again, the framework is the 3 L's, which is learn, leverage, and lead. So I hope this was really helpful. I know it was a little bit everywhere and it was more of a technical episode, but I just want to restate that your job may not be secure, but your ability to adapt is. You are responsible for how you learn. You're responsible for how you use your learning and the tools that are given to you and the opportunities. Make sure that you are not just a robot, just constantly offloading everything to AI or to whatever you're doing, but actually utilizing these tools to help amplify them for your growth and development and whatever you're doing. And I think AI is such a great tool to use. I think it is something that I want to learn more about, especially how to prompt it, seen in that Claude vending machine story, and just really being curious with it and experimenting with it, because that's how you get better. It's when you are just playing around with these things and seeing how you can integrate it into your life and how it can benefit you, and not just being passive with it. And definitely check out that episode of moving from reactive to proactive, because I think that really talks about how you can be engaged and stay active with just the fast-paced changing landscape that is the world and society and humans, and that you are not behind if you stay engaged. There is no timeline, but you are responsible for what you do and what you learn and what you take in, and just really being mindful of that and intentional with all these things that you're doing. And so I just wanted to leave this episode off on a reflective question. Where could AI make your thinking clearer this week and not easier? Because we always want to jump to things that are easy, but the most growth happens when things are boring, because it's the consistency that happens. It's no longer that novelty seeking feeling like, oh my gosh, I can do this. This thing is new. It's so exciting. No, it's the things that you're actually consistently showing up for. Definitely ask yourself that and see how you can implement a new learning in this week. And save this episode, comment, follow along so that I can hear your thoughts and thinking about this episode, so I can make more things that are resonating with you. And also share it with somebody who is maybe panicking a little bit about their career or about AI. And experiment once with AI before this next episode. Read something on Substack, do a little bit of prompting with AI, and just see how things work. And I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I definitely think it was something that I was really interesting in talking about, just because AI is something that I'm still learning with. So I feel like I'm not an expert to really talk about it, but I think I am an expert in the sense of that I am a student, and we are definitely implementing AI into our university and in our modules, and just seeing how we can use it in a conducive manner in education, which I think is definitely a struggle, because there's so many students who just use AI to write their essays or to learn for them. That's where the dangers of AI comes from, when we're are not a collaborator with these skills. So the next episode is going to be all about embodiment and the power of belief, which I think is just such an important topic. And then we'll be moving on to our next career upskilling episode. But I hope you've been enjoying these career upskilling series. I think they're just so important and interesting in learning how to use such important skills that are always talked about, but maybe not really taught about how to implement, so that you can be an attractive candidate and that you can use them to navigate your career, which I know that I need, hence why I'm making them. I hope this episode was helpful and opens your mind up a little bit to learning new skills and not being fearful of changing technologies and things like that. But yeah, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. So this episode is going to be talking all about how important it is to stay up to date with skills and trends and technologies, and how when you fear these things, it actually harms you because you're not being able to adapt with the current landscape, especially in your careers, where it's so important to have these skill sets to enhance your attractiveness as a candidate, to be employable, and also to show up as the best person that you can.